this talk is about how I tracked my pregnancy with Python and emojis. First, some introductions. My name is Hannah Hazi. I'm a developer advocate here in Cambridge, UK. This is a picture of me back when I was pregnant with my son. That's when I put together this app. I don't know if you can quite see the app screen that I'm holding there, but it says that he's about the size of a bunch of grapes at the time. So I'm holding up some grapes to demonstrate what that looks like. Back when I was pregnant, I came across a lot of different pregnancy tracking apps and websites. Some of the stuff that they showed me was pretty fun, like the baby size comparisons to different fruits and vegetables. And other stuff I was less interested in. So there were quite a few apps that had links to things like online registries, collections of all of the stuff that you're supposed to gather together before the baby arrives. That kind of thing that I just wasn't interested in, together with sometimes they'd have links to somewhat outdated medical information, stuff about the things that you're supposed to eat or not eat during pregnancy. So I wanted to find something that was a bit different. Fortunately, here in the UK, we have access to something called the NHS, which is the National Health Service. This is a health service that's free at the point of use for all UK residents. They also have a website, which is available anywhere in the world. It's called nhs.uk. You go on there and you can see information about pretty much any medical condition you can think of without any embedded ads or anything, and it's kept up to date. But their page for pregnancy is not super inspiring. It's a bit bland. So I thought that I would pull that together with my own app to do some little fruit and vegetable comparisons and also a link to the NHS site. So let me show you what the app looks like, first of all. So if you go to howpregnantami.com, let's go to howpregnantami.com, then you can see the app. It says what size is BB. So there's 3 different methods of calculation that you can do: due date, last period, or conception date. So I'll select due date. Let's pick one that's in the near future. So it says your baby is the size of a jack-o'-lantern, you're 38 weeks pregnant. And then if you click the more about this week link, then it takes you to the relevant NHS page with all the medical bits and bobs you need to know. And you can also create an account. If you want to sign up, it'll store the due date information that you have, so you don't have to keep putting in it every time. So I already have one here, so I'll just sign in. And so this is a demonstration example. It says 37 weeks pregnant, your baby is the size of a bowl of salad. So you can delete the account, or you can also sign up for weekly email updates, which I'll talk you through how that works in a little bit. Okay, so that's the app. How did I write it? So I used a tool called Anvil. So full disclosure, I now work for Anvil as a developer advocate, so I'm not entirely unbiased when I talk about their tools, but I do genuinely think that it's really helpful. So Anvil is a Python web framework which lets you write web apps just purely in Python. So you don't have to learn CSS, HTML, JavaScript, any of that stuff. If you just know a bit of Python, that's enough to build an app. So I really like it, and I got into using it before I started to work for the company. The cool thing about it is also that it's open source, so no matter what happens to the company, you can still use the tools. Any Python 3 string can contain any Unicode code points, which opens up a whole universe of emoji for us to use. This is obviously amazing, and we should use it as much as possible in our code. So that's why I thought it would be cool to use emoji for the different fruits and vegetables. So I added an email service as well for users, which had an unsubscribe option. And as you saw from my app demo just then, you can also delete your account with a single click if you're logged in. I wanted to make sure that it was super easy to delete an account and to unsubscribe for obvious reasons during pregnancy. You want to preserve your privacy as much as possible. So this is what the emails look like. So it's pretty simple. It just has a link to the relevant page of the NHS site, which you can click on from your inbox. And then the email itself has a customized unsubscribe link at the bottom. So enough talk, show me the code. So let's dig into it. So if we go to the app here, this is the Anvil editor, which is just an online IDE that has your Python code and graphical user interface all in one place. So scroll through, as you can see, these are all the buttons. They don't all display at once, but this is how it looks when we're putting it together. And we make them visible and invisible in the code. So you can change the text of the labels. And you can just drag fresh components from a little toolbar there. Okay, so let's have a look at what one of the buttons does. So if we look at the code here, you can see that this is, there are a bunch of different methods, and basically each of them corresponds to one of the buttons in this GUI here. So if we take a look at how pregnant am I, which is the trigger calculation method, then you can see that when we click the how pregnant am I button, then we pop up the calculation method, and depending on which picker we've chosen, so date of conception, due date, or date of last period, then it'll update the user days accordingly using the due date returned from that pop-up. And likewise, if you look down here, you can see there's all kinds of other methods dealing with each of the other buttons, like the sign up button. So here are the three. This is the main piece of code. There are a couple of other smaller pieces of code to deal with each of the calculations. So the date of conception, so that's, for instance, when you know exactly when you conceived. So if you had IVF, for instance, so that's pretty simple. You just add 266 days to the known date of conception. There's also due date, which again, very simple. You pick that exact date and do the calculation that way. That's, for instance, if you've had a scan and you, based on fetal measurements, know what the due date is from that. And then finally, we've got the date of the last period, where we can also change the typical length. If you know the length of your cycle is typically different than 28 days. And this is using something called Nagel's rule. So confusingly, for the first 2 weeks of pregnancy, you're not actually pregnant. So it takes account of that. And that's pretty much it for the form. So there are two parts of this app. There's the client code here, which is the code that we've just walked through. And then there's server code, which happens on Anvil server. So client code runs in the user's browser, and server code is what happens on Anvil's servers. The reason it's split up in this way is for security reasons. So anything that's handling users or emails is stored in the servers so that other users can't access your data, and also so that you can't accidentally do things like email other users. So for instance, here we have the main method, which is dealing with emails. So it's a background task. It runs every day, and it checks whether users have a due date that has their week anniversary that day. And if they do, then it sends them a little email with the number of weeks link and the NHS link and an unsubscribe link that's customized with their unsubscribe token. And then if they're over 43 weeks of gestation, then we assume that they must have given birth by then, so remove them entirely from our database. Speaking of which, we should show you what that looks like. So this is a blank version of the app. But I didn't want to show you people's actual emails. But when this has rows in it, each row has that person's email address, when they signed up, when they last logged in, and a customized unsubscribe token so that they can unsubscribe. And we also hash their password and store that in here. So let's go back to the server code. So when you click, the user clicks unsubscribe, then they hit an HTTP endpoint that's customized by their unsubscribe token here. And will return an error which says could not unsubscribe. You check the link is correct if they just type in like a random unsubscribe link instead of the one that's actually in the email that was sent to them. So that just makes sure that you can't have anyone else unsubscribe you, only you can unsubscribe. Yeah, and then we've got just a little method that's similar, which is the welcome email. So we send that when they first sign up for the app. So that's pretty much it when it comes to user handling. The other thing I wanted to show you is the most fun part, which is the emoji. So those all live here. As you can see, they're just stored as Python strings. And when we display which emoji it is, then we just have a quick look up at the due date, and we give the appropriate fruit selection, fruit emoji selection for that due date. And then we also, on a more serious note, get the correct link from the NHS website to give people the medical bits and bobs that they need for that week. I think that's pretty much all we need to cover here. I can obviously answer any and all questions in chat later on, but the last thing I wanted to do was just do a quick preview of the app. So this is at mobile size, but you can resize it. So you can have a live preview, which is handy for if you're modifying your code, then you can just immediately see how that looks and try it out with different inputs without having to publish it live. Yeah, so let's go back to the slides. Here we are back in the presentation. So I have a few additional notes about my experience creating the app. So first of all, to make it pretty, I would recommend pexels.com for free stock images. It's helpful to have images that can be stretched and modified depending on whether you're on mobile or on desktop, because it's a very different aspect ratio. I also used the unicode.org's emoji display site, which was very helpful for checking how the emoji would display on different people's browsers. Also, another side note about duration of pregnancy. So due date is really just a finger in the air estimation of when the baby will arrive, and the actual date baby arrives is this huge probability distribution kind of centered around the due date, almost 2 weeks either side of it. So I didn't want to make people feel bad if they went overdue. In fact, I myself went overdue by nearly 2 weeks. But from personal experience, I can confirm that seeing increasingly large sizes of fruits and vegetables is a bit, you don't need to be reminded of the size the baby is at that point. So once they reach 40 weeks of gestation, I just replace the fruits and vegetables with a baby face emoji. I also highly recommend this book called Technically Wrong, which is all about app development and some of the reasons, digging into some of the reasons why these sorts of femtech apps are often so badly put together or not quite optimized for the experience that you want as a user. It's a really good read. She also has a great talk for Google that I recommend that you check out. The kind of headline from it is that femtech is a known really huge market, but the people who are putting together these apps still don't have a great understanding of what their users want and need. So it's a really fascinating topic, I think. So to learn more about this app, you can go to the blog post that started it all. I wrote this post when I first put together the app. It's called Our Startup is 25% Pregnant. So naturally, I made an emoji-powered Python app. So if you scroll to the bottom of this post, then you can click a link called Clone the Finished App, which will just copy all of my code so you can use it and explore it yourself. And finally, I could not end this talk without sharing a few pictures of Samuel, who is now much bigger than a bunch of grapes. Thank you so much for having me. All questions and comments are welcome. My handles everywhere are Raspberry Cheesecake, including my website, which is raspberrycheesecake.github.io. Thanks again, Codeland. I look forward to hearing more from people who've seen the talk.